This is Secret Mom Hacks, episode number 8. My name is Krista, and I am your host. It's March 29th, 2023, and today's show is going to be a mini episode of sorts. So we've covered a lot of ground over the last few weeks, and there's a lot more to go. But as we wrap up March and look ahead to April, spring has sprung, I thought it may be helpful to look back at the last couple of weeks worth of family and parenting news headlines. That's the publicist in me here. And share with you the top 5 or so articles that I found interesting as a mom. Now, I'll be sure to include direct links to these news items in the show notes so you can access them easily if you want to read further. Before we dive into those headlines, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, Mama. As of this recording, I am chasing around a 4.5-year-old that no amount of Googling mom groups or what to expect when you're expecting books were able to prepare me for. There's a lot of stuff people don't talk about when it comes to pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, postpartum. And as someone who was previously terrified of childbirth, parenthood, and all that follows, I'm here to help you pull back the curtain on all of it. And every now and then, it may get a little messy. We may share a little TMI, but that's why you're here, right? My goal is that you will leave every episode feeling refreshed, inspired, and hopeful, knowing you are not on this mom journey alone. Now, there's a lot of subject matter to cover when it comes to mom life, and we are covering it all. So let's get into these headlines. The first news item I want to cover with you today is a story that ran in The New Yorker. Earlier this month, I believe it was March 6th, and the article is called Biomilq and the New Science of Artificial Breast Milk. This piece was completely fascinating to me. So Biomilq is a startup company that's headquartered in North Carolina. Basically, this company is producing lab-created breast milk. So I want to read a quick quote from this article. So this is actually from one of the co-founders of the company. Her name is Michelle Egger. It says, "Our opinion as a company, and most of us internally too, is that breastfeeding at the breast has benefits that no one will ever be able to mimic. If you can breastfeed, do it. Great. But the reality is a majority of parents cannot exclusively breastfeed, and that's not for lack of trying." So I thought this article was so fascinating as a breastfeeding mother. If you listen to one of my earlier episodes where I talked about my journey breastfeeding my daughter, so I was able to nurse her for about a year, but I had some struggles with that. Getting started, it was not a natural thing getting her to latch. And then even near the end of that year mark, my goal was to nurse her for about a year. I was going through some personal things that between stress and lack of sleep and various things happening throughout my day, it was difficult for me to maintain the supply for her. So I think this article is really, really interesting. Something that, especially if you are a new mom or you have an infant, if you are nursing, or again, heck, just as a parent, I think this is a fascinating read. So that will be linked in the show notes. The next piece is from Today, so from the Today Show, today.com, and it's an interview with an ER pediatrician. The story is titled 7 Things I Never Let My Kids Do as an Emergency Medicine Pediatrician. This ran March 8th. So earlier this month as well. And again, as a mom, I just thought this was a helpful read. Probably a lot of the items in this piece are things that many of us parents would likely agree on, such as jumping on most trampolines, riding an ATV, swimming alone, riding anything without a helmet, and so on. There's some information about firearm safety, firearms in the home, and so on. So this is for sure an article that I think is important for all parents to read. The third headline that I think you might find interesting was a piece from the Washington Post. This article is titled 10 Questions to Ask When Choosing a Daycare Provider. This piece ran March 23rd. And so there's 10 questions here that, again, if you are homeschooling your children or if your kids are staying at home, this wouldn't necessarily pertain to you. But if you are a full-time working parent, or maybe you do work from home and you need to be able to have some time to do whatever you need to do from the house, kid-free, then this article I think might be of interest to you. Just good follow-up questions to ask are all in this article. So one of the questions is, what is your ratio of teachers to children? How do you address behavioral problems? What do you do to keep the property secure? How many caregivers are certified to administer CPR and first aid, and so on. So really super helpful article if you are in the market for a new daycare provider, or even maybe for the daycare provider you're currently using. I think that these are all super helpful questions for all of us who are working with daycare providers to ask them. The fourth article I want to share with you is from the Australian news outlet KidSpot. And this piece ran last week. It was March 23rd. And this story is called Parents Beware If You Let Your Children Watch YouTube Kids. So Hannah Bishop is another mom who recently jumped on TikTok to warn other parents about being mindful about what their kids are watching online when it comes to video clips, in particular YouTube. So she said, please be careful of what your children are watching on YouTube. I was shocked when I saw this video pop up while my 2-year-old was watching. So then she goes on to show it was actually a Thomas the Train video clip. So very sweet little innocent blue train that so many of our kiddos really enjoy watching. And that sweet little train turned in just a couple of seconds to an evil train. And this Thomas the Train is driving along the train tracks singing, I'm going to chug, I'm going to chew, I'm going to kill the lot of you. And this cartoon's eyes went from black to red. And so that's very scary. And that's certainly not something that I want my kids watching or singing back. You know, kids are like sponges. Whatever they see and hear, they're often going to mirror that. So the last thing I want to do is have my little one running around saying, I'm going to chug, I'm going to chew, I'm going to kill the lot of you. That is terrifying. That's awful. So kudos to Hannah. Kudos to Hannah for bringing this to our attention. And again, I will link directly to this article in the show notes so you can check out the full piece so that you can see the actual TikTok clip even that went viral if you haven't seen that yet. The last story I want to share with you today is terribly sad. It's horrifically tragic. So this past week, there was a tragedy that happened in Nashville, which is very close to where I live. Our family lives just outside of Nashville, and we are in Nashville a lot. So on Monday, March 27th, an active shooter went into the Covenant School in Nashville, which is in a part of town called Green Hills. And that shooter opened fire and killed 6 people. 3 of those people were students. They were all age 9. And then the other 3 people worked at the school in some capacity. And so that's really all I'm going to say about this story. It's an absolute horrific tragedy. So I'm going to link to the Associated Press story. It's called What We Know About the Covenant School Shooting in Nashville. So if you weren't aware of this mass shooting that happened in the school here in Nashville, be sure to check out that article. There's another article that I'm going to share kind of in tandem with this piece because, of course, when something like this happens, again, as a parent, my heart just breaks for the parents and the families who were affected by this terrible event on Monday. And so several news outlets have actually ran stories about how to help those who are affected by this shooting. So in particular, I'm going to link to a story that ran this week from the Tennessean. It's called How to Help Those Affected by the Covenant School Shooting in Nashville. So there is a nonprofit in our area called the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, and they have established a Caring for Covenant fund to manage donations to the school. So all donations that are made to the fund, minus credit card fees, will go to the Covenant School to support the healing of those affected by this tragedy, according to the foundation. So in that Tennessean story, as well as in my show notes, you'll be able to find the link if you feel so moved to donate to the Community Foundation's Caring for Covenant Fund. So as I said at the beginning of the show, this is a mini episode. I hope you enjoyed this format. This is something that I'm looking to do probably at the end of each month or every few months. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. This is ebbing and flowing as I'm figuring out growing the show and building it, but I hope you're enjoying it. Before I wrap, I just want to remind you to take care of yourself, because it's really hard to take care of those you love if you're not taking care of yourself too. So just a quick reminder, make sure you're drinking plenty of water, get outside. I don't know where you are, but the weather where we are, it's really starting to turn beautiful as we're moving into spring. Move around the house for 10 minutes. Take a walk around your block if you can. Something that I've been trying recently is to hit 10,000 steps every day. Some days it's really easy. Some days I feel lucky to even get in 3,000, depending on what's going on. But do whatever you can. Do whatever makes sense for you. Just get up and move, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Like I said, drink that water, stay hydrated. Make sure you wash your face before you go to bed. So many of us don't do that. Just want to slip in, go right to sleep. But believe me, your skin is going to thank you, especially when you wake up that next morning. Okay, so thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star rating. Leave a short review sharing your favorite takeaway that you have gotten so far. And also make sure you stop by Secret Mom Hacks, where you can find transcripts, resources, and a ton more. There's a whole lot more on the way. I have so much in store for you, friends. So stay tuned for next week's episode. And until then, you got this, Mama.